Hey guys, welcome back to another code.org tutorial. In this second lesson for our Choose Your Own Adventure story, we're going to be looking at how to create items, and to do that, we're going to learn to use something called variables. So let's begin. Right, I've got on here in my design a series of different screens, really simple things. So it's got a background image, as you can see here. There's a button. And if we just sort of look through here, we have another image and a button, right? More images and buttons, okay? And of course, you can have some narration here using either the text area or the label. So labels will be see-through, so you need to be very careful of the text color. So you can type in, you are lost in the woods. And of course, you can see that black is actually very hard to see. Because of the colors in the background. The white looks a little bit better, but sometimes it's better not to use the transparent background in the labels. It's better to use the text area where the text is going to be a lot easier to see. So, you are lost in the woods. Okay. So once you've started working on these different screens, different narrations, I've got a cave here that you can enter. Okay. Now, what I actually want to do here in this example is there is a sword item that the character may encounter, and they can choose to take the sword or to leave the sword behind. Now, what I want to try to simulate is that if they do have the sword, I want this option to become available. But if they don't have the sword, I want to make this option disappear. And how we achieve that, let's just have a look at how this code works first. So this is the beginning of our story. They begin, they escape. It doesn't matter what happens right now, even if they leave the sword, okay? And they choose a path, enter the cave, okay? So the sword still remains there, and just to demonstrate this, even if they take the sword, of course, it would still be there as well. So it doesn't matter what they choose, the sword is always going to be there. And so let's look at how we're going to achieve removing the sword. So the first thing we're going to do is when you click on the sword button, so this is my screen 5 button /, and if we scroll down, there is a hidden tick box at the bottom. So if we tick that, notice that the button becomes a little bit sort of semi-transparent. So that's showing that the button is hidden. It's there, but it's hidden for now. And the next thing we'll need to do is I need to talk a little bit about variables, because that's how we're going to achieve what we're trying to do. So we're going to click in here on the purple slot here in our coding section, and we're going to create a variable. So all variables are created, or we say they're declared in programming using this notation in JavaScript. So var, this creates the variable. If you don't create the variable, you can't use it, right? It's like if you don't make a cake, you can't eat it. Of course, you can buy one, but there's still the process has to be made first, okay? So the variable must be made or created or declared before we can use it. So I'm going to call, all variables have to have a name. So I'm going to call mine or name it sword. And it's always a good idea to start our variable off with a value. This time I'm going to give it a value of 0. And I'm also going to leave a comment here as well. Where are the comments? I think they might be, nope, they might not be anywhere. Okay, so I'm going to go actually into text mode, and I'm going to leave a comment on top. So I'm just going to put a double slash. You don't need to do this step, but this is a really good programming practice to remind ourselves what these different values are going to mean. So let me just type this out for sword equals 0, or is assigned the value of 0. And this means no sword. And I'm going to leave another note. Sword is assigned the value of 1. Just for a note, we don't read the equal sign as equals. Sword does not equal 0. Sword is assigned a value of 0. Okay, so we read the equal sign as is assigned. Okay, now 1 is going to represent have sword. We're going to go back to the block mode. And so you can see the stuff in gray. This is not actual programming code. Again, it's a message to remind us how our program works. So what I've done is I've labeled or given two different values for sort and have explained what they're meant to do. Okay, so what's happening right now is initially my sort has a value 0, which means or stands for that we don't have a sort. Okay? So of course, when we start our game off, we don't have a sort, right? Now, when do we actually pick up the sword? That happens in screen 6 sword. Okay, so we can take it or leave it. So I'm going to scroll down and find my screen 6 button. So there's take sword and there's leave sword. Okay, so if we take the sword, we're going to change or reassign the value of sword to 1. Okay? And if we leave the sword, now we could also set the sword value to 1 to 0 here. It's not really necessary because we started with a value of 0, but just to show you guys, it's not, it might help you organize your thoughts a bit better. So we set sword to 1 and sword to 0. Okay, leave the sword, no sword. Take the sword, have sword. Right, that's exactly what we described here. Okay, and there's no textbook that says 0 it must be no sword and 1 means to have a sword. Okay, but generally the way we programmers think about this is we sort of think of it like money, right? If you have no money, that's $0. Okay, so 1 we're starting to have some money, right? So that's why we use 0 and 1 here. But of course, you can choose any values that you like. Okay, the next step we're going to need to do is in our code where we have our screen 5 left, we're going to want to make this button visible. Okay, now there should be, I don't know if it's available here or not. Okay, I might have to go back into the text mode here. So right over here,
I don't have it. 唔係話俾佢聽嘅，佢可能我叫佢自己再落嚟揾多次，咁就。